Hello, friends. Welcome back to the BSH podcast. I am Steve Jacot, filling in for Ryan Gilbert, who is he's in jolly old London town. Is that right, Joe DeMarini?
I actually have no idea where he is, but that sounds correct.
I think I saw a picture from him over. I want to say he was in London or
Okay.
England, but I
Cheerio.
have no clue. So cheerio, maybe, or
Hip, hip.
my apologies if that's not the case. But Gilbs, I hope you're having fun, no matter where you are in the world. That's not America. So,
And Gilbs, if you could do me a favor, bring me back some beans. I know.
the bean man.
I hear they like beans over there.
Oh man, beans for breakfast, beans in the morning, beans in the evening, beans at supper time.
I'll take
When
them.
Joe has beans in front of him, he can have beans anytime.
I'm having lentils for dinner tonight, so I'm all over the legumes.
The number one bean boy is right here. And Joe, I don't know if we've actually sat down and formally had a podcast together before, so this is quite the occasion today.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time. I don't think it ever has been just the two of us. It's been like 3 people, maybe 4 if we're having like a big thing. So yeah,
There you go.
It's a special time. Glad to have you on.
Oh yeah, just the two of us. Yes, I could potentially have more podcasts coming this week for Flyperbole. We shall see. A few factors on that front, and the Flyers have a big ass break this week, so that also is like it's weird because they've had such jam packed weeks.
Yeah,
To have a break at this point is like very strange to me, but whatever.
I think the rest of the league just kind of has to catch up in games played. Like
why do they always do this? Like they just make the Flyers like go through the ringer to start the season, and then like all of a sudden it's like, yeah, big break, lose all momentum.
Yeah. That's exactly how it goes. But
before we like get into momentum on our end, I have to have
Sure.
a word from our friends over at Bet Online real quick. So folks, Bet Online continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA and college basketball, the NHL, baby, to UFC. Head to Bet Online today and don't forget to use promo code BLEAV, BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, the game starts here. And, from that angle, I have to say, if you're going to bet on one thing with the Philadelphia Flyers these days, it's Matvei Michkov, who has delivered us yet another clutch goal, a cold-blooded goal from Michkov. And man, I think we all had expectations coming into the season. We all tried to temper our expectations a little bit because this is Philadelphia where bad things happen. Routinely bad things happen to us, especially as hockey fans. So we were expecting, okay, I think Michkov's going to be good, but I don't want to get my hopes up too much, right? But man, this kid is having a hell of a start to his NHL career. 9 goals, 10 assists, and 23 games played at this point. Another overtime winner. He has tied Sidney Crosby, Rick Nash, and Ilya Kovalchuk for the most overtime goals by a teenager in league history. Absolutely absurd. And that is amazing company right there.
It is incredible. And unfortunately for him, he is not too far away from no longer being a teenager. So if he wants to set that record, they got to do it by, let me see, his birthday is December 9th. They have until December 9th to get him one more overtime winner.
With the rate with which this team goes to overtime, I wouldn't be shocked if he got it because I feel
tell
like
me about it.
Every other game for this team is overtime at this point.
It's thank God they're on like the East Coast for most of these, because at the start of the season when they had that West Coast swing, I was like, oh God, please don't go to overtime. It's already 12:30. But
I think I worked PHLY post game for one of those, and I was just like delirious on it.
Hey, on the bright side, it looks like overtime has turned into a strength for them, which is a big change for the Flyers as an organization. They're doing better at 3-on-3. Wonderful to have Matvei Michkov on that wider open ice, and TK, I suppose.
I mean, dude, the chemistry they're already showing at 3-on-3 is incredible.
That play in the last one, oh my goodness, TK diving swing of the stick sends it right to Michkov. He's on a breakaway and nets it against the Blues. Unbelievable.
And they've shown it a few times now because they've had 2-on-1s where they've already had incredible chemistry with each other. And I love to see it, especially this is part of the reason why you sign Konechny to that long-term contract that he has. I know a lot of people complained about that, but part of that is to surround Michkov with talent that can actually help him perform at his top level coming into the league. So they complement each other incredibly well, and this should be an amazing 1-2 punch for years to come at this point.
I'm so stoked. And, we've talked about it on the show before. The cap is going up this summer, and it might be going up twice this summer. There's, the annual 3 or 4 or whatever million that it's going to go up by. And then Elliot Friedman tweeted several weeks ago that there's discussions within the league and with the Players Association to add another $3 million to the cap. So if that happens, the TK contract, well, it's too long-term, it's too high AAV. Well, guess what? It's going to look real good. And you know who else's contract is going to look real good? Travis Sanheim, who I believe was also on the ice for that overtime goal, perhaps. I can't remember if he was out there.
Yeah, I'm not sure offhand, but Sanheim's contract is looking better every day. I've loved the way he's played this year. He has really come along since Tortorella took over. You can look at, there's been certain guys who have kind of sank or swam with Tortorella as the head coach of the Flyers. But, the guys who have really learned to swim and learned to play under Tortorella and benefited from it, those guys have done amazingly well. I mean, Sanheim and Konechny are the Travi are the top 2 guys I can think of for that. And Sanheim, to turn from a guy who we were all questioning that long-term commitment to. We knew he had the talent, but the consistency wasn't there. And then to see him now turn into a guy that's playing 25 plus minutes a night, might make the Canadian team for this 4 Nations tournament, whatever the hell that is, it's a hell of a turnaround. And people universally now are praising Travis Sanheim's play with the Philadelphia Flyers.
Thank you, Torrey Krug.
I am grateful every day of the hockey season to Torrey Krug for turning down that trade. We say bad things happen in Philadelphia. Torrey Krug knew that reputation and said, I don't want any part of that. And thank God, because his career might be done.
It could be.
Him and Ryan Ellis could be the ultimate LTIR combo right there.
Krellis Island. No, I know everybody's like, well, this team should be tanking. They would absolutely be tanking if they had executed that trade, Also, as far as 4 Nations goes, I think we had some tweets out of practice today that at the end of practice, there were big congratulations and backpats for 3 Flyers. Travis's Konechny and Sanheim, and Rasmus Ristolainen. Now, if you don't know, the 4 Nations rosters are going to be announced. I think it's today, right? Or maybe later this week.
To be honest, that's one area where I'm not up on my news. I don't even know. So Joe, for the listeners and myself, who are the 4 nations involved in this 4 Nations challenge?
Of course. The 4 nations are Canada, USA, Finland, and Sweden. So Konechny and Sanheim had outside shots at making Team Canada, and they couldn't confirm or deny anything because the rosters haven't been officially released to the public. But the way it looked at practice and when asked about it, they were reportedly smirking as they said, no, I haven't heard anything about it. We'll see what happens. But
natural.
But it sounds like they might be on the team. And then, say what you will about Rasmus Ristolainen, he was a shoo-in for Team Finland. They just don't have that number of really NHL level players. So he's been playing great too anyway. So he truly has deserved to be on his nation's roster, but he was kind of a shoo-in.
Talk about another turnaround under John Tortorella and Brad Shaw. Risto was a guy that I routinely would call trash before. I would say he was just not a good NHL level defenseman.
He was bad.
Now he's just straight up reliable. He's a guy that I think is a valuable member of the team. And hopefully, I think he could be a very valuable trade chip for this team if it comes to that. I still have my doubts that Keith Jones will allow such a trade because he is the number 1 Rasmus Ristolainen fan there is. He is the founding member of the Rist Alliance. But Jones, he probably won't. But the thing is, Ristolainen has really become a useful player. He can play on the top pairing, which he didn't used to be able to do.
No.
And it's cool to see, man. It's really amazing to see just how far a lot of these guys have come.
Yeah. He is no longer, I'm no longer trying to actively ship him out of this team. I
Right.
am waiting to get like a good offer at this point. Like, I think Jonesy, as big a fan of Risto as he is, he knows that this is a rebuilding team. Ristolainen doesn't fit the timeline. They have Hunter McDonald. They have other guys in the pipeline that could fill that role. And if the right offer comes along, I think they jump at it. But he's got 2 years left on his contract. We talked about the cap just a second ago and how it might be going up even more this summer than expected. Risto's $5.1 million is suddenly going to look pretty attractive for what he can bring to a roster. God, get that man in the playoffs. We've been waiting. He's been waiting. He has been waiting so long to be in the playoffs.
Hey, Angelo, how you doing? I want to see playoff Risto more than anything. I'll hang up and listen. Yeah, we're all about playoff Risto over. I would love to see these guys in the playoffs, and I know it sounds like a pipe dream. I'm not counting on it, especially after last season. I really wanted it for those guys, and it was better for them that they didn't because it helped their draft position and everything. But I wanted to see those guys get into the playoffs and see what they could do. I want to see it even more now with cold-blooded Matvei Michkov over there, Risto playing at a good level, Sanheim playing at a good level, and then just some of these other guys that have popped up, from the minors this year. They've really had some revelations on this roster. I mean, the number one guy who I've just been blown away by is Emil Andre this year.
Yeah.
Emil Andre came out of nowhere. He was a guy who was a bubble guy for this roster for years. And, well, not a bubble guy for years, but this year he was a bubble guy.
He made it last season.
Yeah. But like he's turned himself into a guy that you can't send down again.
No. What, are you not a big Tony Dick fan? Yeah.
Listen, I do like Ant Dick over there. Like, I think he's actually I think he's a lot of fun. And I think his speed is something that could be really good if they do make a trade, like say Scott Lawton or something. Like,
sure.
Scott Lawton, a guy who I love. I adore Scott Lawton as a person. As a hockey player, I don't know. I could part with him. I would love to see a guy like Richard in there with actual speed, because the more speed that this lineup gets, the more they can actually hang with modern NHL game.
Yeah. Remember a couple weeks ago when everybody was like, why is Michkov on a line with Anthony Richard and Ryan Poehling? This is a disaster. That worked out pretty well for the short term. And now he's back up to being with like Frost and Tippett. So whatevs, man. You can't get that.
I wasn't happy about it. I wasn't happy about it.
Nobody was happy about it. But guess what? Like, if it's just like 3, 4, 5 games, who cares? In the grand scheme of things, it's fine. He's gonna get his chance back on like the top 6. So,
I guess.
He did great with them. Richard and Poehling can blow into the zone with their speed, establish a presence, and then Michkov just comes in and starts going to work on like an opponent's lesser lines.
But those are the kind of guys, like, I want to see more of those guys in the bottom 6. I want to see more speed. Richard, Poehling has some really good speed for a fourth line center. Like, he really does. More speed, that's something the Flyers have always lacked. It is time, fellas, especially, if they can get more speed at the center position, and maybe a little bit more size would be nice too. I want to see more talented guys for these talented wingers to play with, because I think it's going to make such a difference if some guys can open up space for Owen Tippett, Matvei Michkov, Travis Konechny, Tyson Forrester. That's the setters really have to do that kind of stuff. And they just have, it's brutal having like basically just Coots out there sometimes.
I know. Well, the good news is they may not have size, but the World Juniors Canada roster was announced today as well. 4 Flyers made the team. 4 Flyers prospects. 1, Jet Luchenko.
Jet.
There's our center. He's got speed. He's 5'11".
Dude, Jet's one concern I don't have, because he played bigger than his size in those few games he got. And I love everything. I was talking about, I had an hour-long phone conversation with my dad today about half the Eagles, but then we talked a shocking amount of Flyers. And I brought up Jet a few times because I am excited. Like, Jet is definitely the future for this team.
Yep. The other forward is Denver Barkey, who again doesn't have size. Oh God, he's so fun.
I don't know if he's going to be a center for this team, but like, I like his feistiness. He's kind of like TK Jr., which I enjoy.
I like that comparison. In another sense, he's an amazing penalty killer. I don't know if this player comp is quite right, but I would love it if he turned into like former Flyer Cam Atkinson in his prime. Like, Cam Atkinson in his prime was like a 5'8", 5'9" goal scorer who could kill penalties and was excellent on Columbus's power kill. So if that's Denver Barkey's future as like a middle six undersized winger who can just, score goals and take teams apart, that's a lot. That's a pretty good thing to get from a 3rd round pick.
Oh, I loved Cam Atkinson in his prime. He would have been an awesome flyer in his prime, to be honest. And I enjoyed the short time we had with him. It's just the injuries were too much for him.
Yeah, and he's just getting up there. And then the other flyer to make it is Oliver Bonk. Who, that's not really a surprise. He's playing on one of the better teams in the OHL. So, yep, good for Bonk.
It's kind of funny, though, that like you have Luchenko and Bonk who couldn't be having more different experiences down with their juniors teams right now.
And Barkey's the captain of Bonk's team. How about, you love it. You love to see it.
That's chemistry before they even make it up. That's like, I briefly, I'm not going to talk about football too much, but like one of the nice things that the Eagles have done with their draft strategy in recent years is they've drafted a lot of the guys from the same college. They've drafted a lot of guys from the University of Georgia, and these Georgia Bulldogs now, like they have pre-existing chemistry coming into this. So they're going into the majors and they already know each other. They trust each other. They know each other's playing style. And you're already seeing it make a difference with these guys. So for the Flyers to have guys that are already building up a rapport, and we're talking like 2 years down the line when they're Philadelphia Flyers, they're already best friends. They already know each other.
And it's not just chemistry. Like these are highly rated organizations that they are developing in. You draft players from those highly regarded organizations, you have a much better chance of them working out because you know that they're getting good coaching, they're getting good support, and there's that history. And then the 4th flyer to make this roster, one Carson Bjarnason, goaltender for the infamous Brandon Wheat Kings. Who the Flyers have a great relationship with, do they not?
That was a name that I mentioned. Oh, the Wheat Kings. Oh boy, that sure is a name. Number one, always a great team name, the Wheat Kings. Can't beat that. Also, speaking of names, Carson Bjarnason is. I had to tell my dad that name 5 times earlier today because he was like, "What is that?" I'm like, Carson Bjarnason.
Carson Bjarnason. Oh,
Carson Bjarnason. Oh, it's a Swedish chef name.
Yeah, to take it to each ball.
Carson Bjarnason, yeah. But like, yeah, I mean, but like, it's cool to have that many guys represented there, and that just shows that they're really building some organizational depth.
Whoa. Hold on, Steve. I was told this team is not rebuilding.
Yeah, and they don't have anything in the pipeline.
Nothing.
I love how just they guys get trashed all the time for this stuff, and it's like, guys, look around. Like we have Michkov. Luchenko's already like he's already gone way above where people thought he was going to be drafted. Like the fact that he got drafted early and now people are looking at him going, no, that might have been a good pick there.
A bit of
pretty amazing. But you know what? It might not be now.
Yeah.
It might have just been the scouts knew what the hell they were talking about. Yeah. And it's cool to see all of a sudden you look around the Flyers and you're like, all right, we really do have the building blocks. We need some pieces for sure. But they have tons of draft picks coming up. So you look, okay, they need centers. That's obvious, right? But you can work deals for centers. You can draft and develop centers. Like there are ways to get that depth. And you put guys in place right now to play with Michkov. And all of a sudden you're looking at the roster like 2 years later, you're like, oh, this is a pretty good hockey team. And they're already like, I would say how they're playing right now, they're a pretty good hockey team right now. Yeah. I don't know if they're a good team, but they're a pretty good team right now. And I like a lot. And they're winning games, which that's all you can ask for from this team.
Not only are they winning games, they're finding ways to win in different ways. Like that Vegas game that ended up going 5-4. That's a pretty high scoring game for this team. And they managed to not win, but take it to overtime. They can grind it out against the grittier teams. Like they're finding a variety of ways to get the job done. But what you bring up about prospects, 2 things. One, first is a lot of people criticize the organization. The only thing in the pipeline is bottom sixers and third pair defensemen. No, you look at the prospect profiles for a lot of the guys they've drafted in the past 2 years. They are either going to make it in like a top 9, top 6 forward role or a top 4 defenseman role, or they are not going to be in the NHL. Their game is just not going to translate at all. So they do not have those like grinders that they get criticized for always drafting. These are prospects that if they make it, they are going to capital M make it in like a way that, you know, Bobby Brink, for example, he's a great example of that. Like, he's either going to be a top 9 guy or he's not going to play in the NHL because he cannot be a fourth line physical presence.
That's a great example there, because he really can't be a guy who he's too skilled. And if that skill doesn't translate properly, then there's no point in even having him up there. Like, what are we even doing here, folks? So you're essentially saying there's no Tyrell Goldborns to be found here. There's no Zach Ronaldos to be found here.
I mean, the closest one I can think of might be Noah Powell or maybe Devin Kaplan. But even then, they have enough skill that they could be a scoring fourth line. They're both big. They're both high compete, high energy guys. But you know, hey, they could be more than that. But if they make it, they could be a bottom sixers, but with skill. You know, kind of in the vein of a Garnet Hathaway, who is like a perfect bottom sixer.
I'm cool with that, and you need guys like that to play on the bottom. Like, somebody has to play fourth line. Somebody has to. And I'll take Hathaway and Paling. Those are two of the better fourth liners I've seen here over the past decade. When you think back to, you remember when Chuck Fletcher decided, you know what we need for our playoff push in Philadelphia? We need 2 more fourth liners.
Oh,
oh no. I'm talking about Derek Grant and Nate Thompson.
Nate Thompson. I wasn't following the team yet.
Oh my God. So yeah, which is insane to me. Like, I can't even imagine like getting into the Flyers now. It just sounds horrible. But Derek Grant, what was it? Grant and Thompson? I forget if it was.
It was definitely Nate Thompson.
Nate Thompson was definitely there. There was another center as well, which was a real, like, I'm gonna Google it right now. But it's just like inexplicable that they were making trade deadline moves to get fourth liners. Like, it was just crazy to me. And I'm pulling it up now.
The only thing I remember from what I've heard in the lore is that JG Pajot was available. Can you imagine if they'd gone out and got JG Pajot instead?
Pajot went to the Islanders, who would go on to beat the Flyers.
Sure did.
Yeah. That would have been great. But yeah, they decided, no, it was Derek Grant and Nate Thompson. They got 7 games out of them before COVID. And then they had the playoffs, and Grant did have the funniest moment in that playoffs because he gave noogies to one of the guys.
The goalie. Was it Carey Price? It would have had to have been Carey Price.
Well, it was, but there was a player who was like messing with him, and I'm trying to remember who it was.
Nick Suzuki messed with Carter Hart and gave.
Yeah, that's it. Suzuki. Yeah. So that was great. Garrett Grant gave us that, but that was pretty much it. But like, you know, those aren't the guys you kind of make trade deadline moves for. Like, those are the guys that like you sign in the offseason, like they did with Paling and Hathaway. And if they fit, great. If not, you have to have a guy in the minors that you think can fill that slot. Like, yeah, you want a good, solid, reliable guy down there, but it's not something that you should be spending draft capital for. It's absolutely absurd. So yeah, what this all amounts to is, I like that they have guys that could potentially fulfill those roles, because you need somebody to do it. And that's why I'm also cool. Like, if you have a good deal for Scott Lawton, great. But if not, like, Scott Lawton is a perfectly cromulent bottom 6 guy who is one of the hearts of the team.
Yeah.
And like,
he's Gritty's best friend. Value. He's Gritty's best friend. You can't trade him. Yeah. They're not trading Zamula because he's Michkov's best friend. You can't trade Scott Lawton because he's Gritty's best friend.
Oh, I think Michkov has made plenty of friends since then. So I would not rest easy if I was Igor Zamula, but Michkov is learning as much as he can very quickly. He might be Travis Konecny's best friend already.
But on the subject of defensemen and trades, a big one came down yesterday. It was yesterday, wasn't it?
I want to say yesterday. Dude, the past 4 days have been a blur with the long weekend and everything for Thanksgiving. And my girlfriend had 2 comedy shows and stuff. So it's just jam-packed weekend doing stuff. So let's just say that recently, in the past few days, this trade happened.
This weekend, I think that'll cover it.
This weekend covers it, yeah.
This past weekend, the Columbus Blue Jackets traded David Jiricek, defenseman, right shot, to the Minnesota Wild. Columbus received defenseman prospect Damon Hunt, 2025 first rounder, 2026 third, 2026 fourth, 2027 second. Minnesota received Jiricek and a 2025 fifth. Now, for those of you who might not know, David Jiricek was picked 6th overall in the 2022 draft. Do you remember who was picked 5th overall Steve.
In
Who
the
was picked fifth
2022
overall?
draft? Was
It
that
was, it was Jamie Drysdale.
Oh, how about that? How
No,
about that?
it wasn't.
I know it wasn't.
It was
It might as well have been. It
Might
might
as
as
well
well
have
have been at this point because, Mile Bill Gauthier Cutter, as you may know him,
Mhm.
was drafted fifth. No, I very much remember. We had a draft party that year. Of course, I remember. We all excited for a guy named Cutter, and then it turned out he was lame as shit.
Yeah. I was pulling for whichever defenseman was available. So the two top ones of that class were Simon Nemec, who the Devils took, and Jiricek. But I was totally on the Cutter train because I was like, oh shit, yeah, he's got a great name. Let's go.
Well, and also his offensive numbers were nice. The fact that we thought he was the center at the time,
Yeah.
also nice. Like it seemed like a great pick. I was down with it. Frankly, I really Nemec was projected to the Flyers in a lot of mocks that year. That would have been great. But
Would have been cool.
yeah, but I think it felt like you couldn't really go wrong there with any of those guys. So I was cool with Gauthier, but again, who could have predicted that he would work out like he has? Ugh, whatever.
No. Well, he was a Penguins fan. He said he modeled his game after Crosby, and he was a Penguins fan growing up. So
yeah, just put on your big boy pants and play for millions of dollars in the NHL. But what can I say? Yeah. But yeah, and by the way, Cutter Gauthier, 3 goals, 7 assists, 10 points. So pretty mid, whatever.
Those have all come. All of the goals have come in like the past couple weeks, though. So he's figuring it out.
Whatever, mid.
Whatever is right. Whatever.
Mid.
He's not here.
He's
not here. He is mid.
So Jiricek, though.
Yes.
So the Flyers were actually rumored to be in the mix here of the finalists. I think it came down to like 4 or 5 teams were in the finalists. Minnesota was the one that pulled the trigger. And I got to say, this is a lot of draft capital right here.
It is.
I don't know much about Damon Hunt, but a first, a third, a fourth, and a second is quite a bit of draft capital. And Minnesota's in a very different place than the Philadelphia Flyers. I mean, they've had Kirill the Thrill there for many years. And frankly, they got to either, I don't know if they're going to get him locked down. So they're going to have to try and win as much as they can. They're closer to win now mode than the Flyers. And Jiricek, I don't know if he's a win now move because he's only 21 and not good enough to make the Columbus Blue Jackets every night. But I think it makes more sense for them currently than the Flyers necessarily.
So the big thing you brought up Kaprizov, they need to show him that they are serious about contending. And trading a bunch of assets for a highly touted defense prospect definitely says, hey, we're serious about putting this together over the long term. You got to remember that the Wild are in a position right now where they have over 14 million in dead cap because of the Ryan Suter and Zach Parise buyouts. That's off the books next year. So picking up a young right shot defenseman, they're going to have just the most devastating top 4. Buyum, Jiricek, Kiviharju, Faber is going to go so hard for so many years for the Minnesota Wild.
In theory.
Well, let's hope the Flyers were right about Luchenko over Buyum, but we're not here to rehash that. We're here to talk about David Jiricek. And the Wild, yes, it's a bit more of a future-focused move, but they have an aging and injured defense core in Jared Spurgeon and Jonas Brodin. So they need to have stuff. They need to have players in the pipeline to come up and fill that depth.
Yeah, I mean, it's future focused, but it's also not in a weird way. Like
he's close enough. He's close enough to the NHL that like they can play him.
Yeah, but like I guess my point is the draft capital that they gave up is quite a bit. So it's kind of saying goodbye to the future while also looking forward to the future. It's a really intriguing trade. Like I don't think you see this many picks for a young player, and we're seeing a lot more trades with young players in recent years that I'm used to. Like I haven't really seen this many. Usually these guys like have to develop first before these kind of trades happen. So this was a big one, especially, I mean, why now? Why early December to make this kind of trade? It's pretty weird. And I don't know much about.
I think that's on Columbus. I think they like the longer they drag this out, the worse it would get for them. So I think
You mean that poverty franchise fumbled the bag again?
Yeah, they sure. Well, also remember Don the Wad is the GM there now, and Jiricek was not one of his draft picks, so not as much connection to him. You know what I mean?
Not one of Don's dudes.
Not one of Don's dudes. This is the guy who ran the Carolina Hurricanes. If he doesn't see something, he might have a point.
Maybe, but I think Dr. T did all the work there. So
Well, it sure looks like that after adding former Flyers Shane Gostisbehere and Sean Walker and the Canes on a run. But that's neither here nor there. No, it's something that Columbus needed to do. The Wild are in a position to do it, and a lot of people are like, "Well, the Flyers should have pulled the trigger. Like, we need to get these kind of high value, high end prospects." And yes, that is true. But there is no guarantee that Jiricek will be a number one defenseman. His skating is a serious knock against him.
They have a lot of players like that already, too.
For sure. We'll get to them. But I also just have to reiterate, 2022 was not that long ago. Briere was the assistant to the general manager, and Brent Flair, who is still the draft guru under Jonesy and Briere, he was Fletcher's draft guru too. They had the opportunity to draft David Jiricek, and they passed on him. I'm sure they think he's a great prospect. He would really help out their defense depth, but maybe in the past 2 years, they haven't seen enough to like radically alter their assessment where they're willing to give up so much to get him. You know what I mean? Like, hey, if he's available, we'll trade you some stuff for him, but this is about as high of a price as we're willing to pay.
Yeah, and I don't know what to think about Jiricek. Like, I know he's got a high pedigree due to the draft position and everything. And I know, we were talking with Thomas in the BSH Slack about this, and Thomas was really high on Jiricek and really wanted the Flyers to pull the trigger on this. I wouldn't have minded the Flyers pulling the trigger on this. I think especially with the crew in place, they really could have developed him nicely. I don't know about the price paid, though. Like, it seems like a lot. I don't know who the comparable prospect they would have had to give up is for Hunt here.
It might be Bonk. It might have been.
Yeah,
Bonk.
and I think I'd rather roll the dice with Bonk, to be honest. But like, I don't know. Like, I wouldn't have minded this move, but like at the same time, I don't mind that they didn't make the move.
Right. So bringing up Bonk here, a lot of people are starting to say like, "Oh, are the Flyers overvaluing him? If there's this much kind of interest in him, why are they holding on to them?" But then you have to reconsider, like, oh, these other front offices might be interested in this guy, like really interested in him. So it's not just the Flyers that think he has a lot of value. Other front offices seem to hold him in high regard as well. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And how do I put this? The Flyers, believe it or not, actually have pretty good organizational depth at defense, young organizational depth. They don't have a clear-cut number one prospect. They don't have, not like a Victor Hedman or Cale Makar level guy. But
sure.
Of
who
like
does?
Who does? Exactly. But of like the 5 or 6 or maybe even 7 guys who are like 23 or younger that are in the system, they have pretty clear shots of becoming top 4 defensemen. And like 2, 3, maybe 4 of them have top pair potential. I'm talking about Cam York. He's already a top pair player. Oliver Bonk, surefire top 4 defenseman. Does he make it to top pair? I don't know. Emile Andre, holy shit, has he been good? Jamie Drysdale has a lot of pedigree and hasn't put it together. We'll see.
Yeah.
Hunter McDonald might end up being a second pair guy. We don't know. Helge Grans looked really good in his.
I liked Helge Grans. Yeah, I liked Helge Grans a lot.
And then they've also got Spencer Gill, who's I talked about prospects earlier who are either going to be in like a top 4 role or not in the league. Spencer Gill might be that kind of defenseman. And there's no guarantee that Jiricek was going to be this number 1 defenseman. Why roll the dice on a guy who hasn't been with your organization and like not give your own D depth some time to cook? Let him cook.
I'm also going to say, like, I think the Flyers not beating this offer out shows that they didn't necessarily, like, they were intrigued, but they didn't believe in him enough to really go for him. Because listen, when you really like a guy, okay, say your name is, I don't know, something like Charles Fletcher or something like that.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Maybe your friends call you Chuck, and then your last name's like Fletcher.
Yeah.
When you see a guy out there who's like over 6'5" and 200 some pounds and can skate pretty well and has some stick skills, and you say, I want to give up my first round pick to get that guy. You give up your first round pick to get that guy, and then you sign him a 5-year contract, no matter what anybody says. Okay. Oh. And then Rasmus Ristolainen's a Philadelphia Flyer forever. But the thing is, if you really like a guy and you really believe that he's that good, especially on defense, where it is always coveted, the top pair defenseman is one of the most coveted positions in the NHL, up there with top line center. The two things the Flyers need the most. Sure. But you go out and you get him. Okay. Cost be damned. And the Flyers had the assets to go get him. So I truly believe Danny Briere didn't think that Jiricek was necessarily that surefire a thing if he didn't go out and do everything in his power to get him. So I'm not going to lose sleep over this. Nope. I would have liked to see the move. I was down for it, but not a huge deal to me.
The other thing you have to remember is that when you trade out those high value assets, you no longer have them when a better deal comes along. Like you talk about over the summer, Yaroslav Askarov, the highly touted Nashville goaltending prospect, who said, I'm not playing for the Preds anymore because you just signed Juuse Saros to an 8-year extension and I'm not here to play backup. So they traded him to San Jose. Flyers were, again, reportedly involved with that offer. Could they have matched what San Jose eventually provided? Probably. Although reports were that the Predators really, really liked David Edstrom. So, that could have swung the scales pretty significantly. But much like the defense, the Flyers actually have pretty good organizational goalie depth. Sam Ersson looks like a 1A. Fedotov may be old, but he's figuring it out at the NHL level. Kolosov looks like he's figuring it out and could become a backup. Then you have Carson Bjarnason, who just made Team Canada. Over in Russia, you've got Yegor Zavragin, who is looking like a stud of a goaltending prospect.
Very excited about Zavragin. If I can pronounce his name ever, I'm very excited. Big Z.
Big Z. Well, they've got one Big Z already, but
but how long is he for this team? Who knows?
We'll have to see.
But I don't know. Like you were talking about all the organizational depth at defense, and frankly, that's got to be a wake up call for a guy like Zamula back there, because he does have competition. He's got a lot of competition all of a sudden, and Emil Andre has leapfrogged him already easily.
I mean, he's already been scratched a couple games. The only thing keeping Zamula up here is that he is no longer waivers exempt. That's probably a big part of it. And
if Drysdale is coming back soon, that's going to be an interesting decision for the team, because they might. I mean, Zamula seems like the clear guy to go down right now, if I'm being honest. And they just sent Grans back down. Was there a corresponding move with sending Helge Grans back down to the Phantoms?
The rumblings on Twitter are that Sam Ersson is going to be starting on Thursday, so he'll be back from IR.
3 goalies, baby.
I'm here for it.
Well, I guess that's one way to make sure that nobody's ever too tired in there.
That's for sure. And that's good. We need to find out, especially about Kolosov and also Ersson, because there was a stretch last year where he looked like for over 2 months, he was second in the league to only Connor Hellebuck in goals saved above expected and save percentage for 2.5 months. So, hey, if he gets enough rest to do that again, damn, that's a good goalie. But back to the depth stuff, you brought up centers and how that is the position of need the Flyers are most desperate to fill. If you trade your highly touted blue chip prospect in Oliver Bonk to get an interesting defenseman, well, now you don't have that to go get a center. So I'm perfectly content. They're like, you know what? We have goaltending depth. We don't need Askarov right now. We have a bunch of defensemen in the system who we need to find out about. So it's fine. Jiricek probably is really good, but we've got a lot of good depth. They didn't take Bouillon because they were like, yeah, Emil Andre is really good. So
I don't believe that was the reason for a second.
I know, but
I don't believe them. I think that was a PR move, but
sure.
I think there had to be, there's a reason Bouillon fell that far in the first place. Okay. There was something about him that teams didn't like. And whether that's, I mean, you could say the same thing about Michkov, right? There's something, Michkov fell way too far, and especially Montreal is kicking themselves over that. Don't tell their fans that, but there was something about Bouillon that they didn't like. I don't know if we'll ever know what it was, but there was something a number of teams didn't like. And I guess only time will tell if they were right about that. But
Right.
I don't know. I don't believe them for a second, though, when they say it's because they had too much depth. That there's no chance. No chance.
No. I mean, his friendship with Cutter Gauthier probably had nothing to do with it. But
I can't imagine. If I have to imagine, there's a reason. It might be the Gauthier. It might be the representation.
College students, they can stay all 4 years and strong arm their way into the league.
I still it still baffles me why Gauthier did what he did, because Gauthier would legit have a chance to be a second line player. And I don't know. I would love an explanation, but until I get one, I'm just assuming he's big baby.
We'll get one day. But
10 years down the line, I'm gonna be old as shit.
That'll be great. It'll be fine. Flyers will have won a cup by then. They'll beat the Ducks in the 2028 Stanley Cup playoffs. It'll be great. But no, to wrap up the Jiricek thing, I'm totally content.
You think those two teams are making the 2028 Stanley Cup final?
Fine, 2029. But to wrap up the Jiricek thing, I'm totally content that they did not pull the trigger. They have a much more desperate and glaring need at center. Hold on to those assets. They have 6 picks in the first 2 rounds this coming draft. They have time. Maybe some center's going to Jack Eichel themselves out of their organization and the Flyers can step in and get them. Or some team like the Ottawa Senators. They have a new owner. They have a new GM. They have a new coach, and they're still not getting it done. The last lever they can pull is a major core roster trade shakeup. So if the Flyers have the assets to get something done there you go. So I'm content that they didn't make the Jiricek move, because they need a center so much more desperately than they need a defenseman, or in the Askarov case, more than a goalie.
Yeah. And when it comes to defense, do I want a surefire number 1? Of course I do.
Who doesn't?
But I kind of prefer to have a deeper, more solid defense overall, because I always think of the 2010 Flyers. I always think of the thing about the 2010 Flyers. They had 2 amazing pairs. Okay. Because they had, I think it was it was Matt Reed and Chris Pronger, and who complemented each other very well. Say what you will about Matt Reed, and a lot of people have some strong fucking takes, but Reed and Pronger were a really, really good pairing. And then Coburn and Timonen. Why did I say Reed? I'm sorry, Matt Carl. I can't believe I'm saying Matt Reed here.
I was going to say, yeah, I was like, Matt Carl.
My brain's all scrambled eggs at this point. Okay. Matt Carl and Chris Pronger. That's hilarious. Matt Carl and Chris Pronger. Great pairing together. A lot of people have strong takes on Matt Carl, but whatever. I thought he was great with Chris Pronger. And then Braden Coburn and Kimmo Timonen, awesome pairing together. Really, really great. Those 2 were awesome. Their third pairing basically didn't exist in that Stanley Cup final. They were not running them out there. So I'd rather have a third pairing that I could trust and a solid top than necessarily that number 1 rock solid, amazing defenseman. I want the number 1 defenseman, of course, but if I could have depth throughout and guys I can trust in the playoffs on all 3 pairings, I prefer that. I
mean, and that Flyers team saw what happens when that number 1 goes down, right? When Chris Pronger goes out, the whole thing falls apart. Tampa Bay without Victor Hedman, the whole thing falls apart. Colorado Avalanche without Cale Makar. Well, Devon Taves is pretty good, but the Florida Panthers won the cup. Who is their true all-around number 1 defenseman? I don't think it's Aaron Ekblad. Brandon Montour ran the power play, but he wasn't on the PK too much, was he? Oliver Ekman-Larsson stepped up in a big way while they were out with injury, but then he locked down the third pair. By doing it by committee, you spread the risk of one person going down, not destabilizing the entire thing. And there's a lot to be said for just being a pair with great chemistry and just happening to the Provorov-Niskanen pair. Isn't Matt Niskanen the greatest defenseman of all time because he brought Provorov along for that ride? I don't know, man.
I don't think he is.
No, I don't think he is. Sometimes it just works. Travis Sanheim right now. If you asked anyone, is he a true all-around number 1 defenseman? No, but he's pretty damn good.
He's damn good. He's playing 25 plus minutes a night. I still don't know if that's sustainable, but you know what? Hey, whatever. He's our guy. He's playing really well right now. He might make this Canadian team for whatever this little tournament is. And I like having him in there, and I like the depth right now. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what this team does over the next 2 years in regards to that defensive depth in the center and who they choose to move for what I think Danny Briere deems the competitive Flyers. Because Michkov moved that timeline up. You know, the way he plays, I think he did. I think he did. I think if Michkov doesn't come over this year, this is a different team entirely. I think this team doesn't look anything like what they look, and you could see it in the numbers. I mean, he's their number 2 scorer. He makes a difference, and he elevates the guys around him. They can't keep up with him is the problem. Like, he's laying passes out there that they're not even thinking about because they don't think on his level. It's crazy. It really is. And I love to see it, but it also is like a little disheartening because it's like, damn, they probably left like 6 or 7 points on the board that could have gone to Michkov. Like, he could actually be higher in the lineup. And it's just, it's wild to think about.
There was that one San Jose Sharks game where Travis Konechny could have had like 7 goals, but they just kept like just missing. My hot take prediction at the beginning of the season was that Travis Konechny was going to pace for 100 points. I didn't say he was going to get there because he might miss some time due to injury or whatever else it may be, but he's got 30 and 25 right now. So all he needs is like 1, 2, 3, like a couple of 2-point nights strung together, or like a really big night like that Minnesota game, and bam, he is on that 100-point pace.
Do it. Let's go into it. No, but just going back to like Michkov in the timeline is like, I don't know how much they've moved it forward, right? But like, I think at least a year. Like,
really?
I think I think maybe not next year, but like maybe the year after you really start to make some moves. Like,
but that's the same year, 2026, 27.
Well, then what did you think I was talking? I don't know. Like, I didn't know how far out the timeline was before that.
In my head, it was always.
Why not in your head, Joe?
Sorry. Well, Michkov was originally going to be over here for the 2026-27 season.
Right.
So
well,
that
okay.
is where
I didn't think they were going to be competitive that year necessarily. I think that I always envisioned Michkov would need a year or 2 in the NHL to really like get his sea legs before they started doing that thing. So that's where I'm at. I think this year he's getting his sea legs, figuring out the North American game.
Sure.
And he's figuring it out quick.
Sure,
it really is. And then next year, I mean, honestly, I'm cool at this point. Let's see what happens in the draft, right? But like, start thinking about these guys. Like, okay, you didn't bite on Jiricek, right? But when guys like Jiricek become available, I want to hear the Flyers involved in it, because it is seeing how Michkov plays, and then you've got some other good young guys around him. What is the final form of this team going to look like? What is the next competitive Flyers team going to look like?
Yeah.
These are really interesting questions over these next 2 years, because they've got a logjam at a few different positions and they've got clear needs. So what do they do at defense? Who ends up being the guy in net, and what do they do at center? Because I don't think there's one center that's obviously going to end up in there, and that's Jiricek-ing. But who are your other center options? Who are potentially in that center mix?
Coots.
And then Coots is going to be there.
Yeah.
But ideally Coots is like
middle
2 or 3.
Yeah.
Right. Like, if Coots is I think Charlie was saying this on a PHLY podcast I was on after they got smoked by the Hurricanes, but where the role that Stahl plays on the Hurricanes is ideally what Coots should be playing on this team. So I want to see that. We obviously can't do that this year. The center solution is not coming this season.
Nope.
I don't think it might not even come next season, but sometime in the next 2 years that will be addressed. And hey, maybe Jet's the center. I don't know. I don't think he is. I think Jet's a 2, but if Jet's a 1, I'm overjoyed. I think Jet's a 2. But what is that going to look like? What are they going to do? I'm so fascinated by this entire situation. Honestly, it's a fun situation to be part of. Like, this is, I think, the most optimistic I have felt about the Flyers in years. I've been doing this a really friggin' long time at this point. And I've had moments where I felt optimistic, but like, I am legitimately looking forward to seeing how they evolve this team.
Yeah. I mean, I saw one playoff run and I was like, fuck yeah, I'm in. Let's get this team. And then they haven't been back since. No, I'm with you. 2026, 27. That's probably where I'm making those moves. But again, I'm glad they did pushing those chips in. I'm glad they've kept their most precious bargaining chips for now.
Yeah.
They've got time to figure it out. And it's not like, worst case scenario, they make all of these draft picks. Those picks have pedigree or whatever you want to call it. They don't just suddenly lose all value the minute you put them into your organization. You can still trade with them. But you just got to wait for a center. Like that is, they can do defense by committee. They have good enough goaltending, and they're going to have better goaltending in a few years. But goddamn, do they need a center? Something fierce.
And I want a big boy, like and not a slow guy, but like I want a guy who can take up some space on the ice. And specifically, I want somebody who can truly help clear the way for Matvei Michkov to be his best self.
Yeah.
Like Matvei can do such amazing things, and I want somebody that can keep up with him, but also can. And I know I'm asking for like Eric Lindros out of like 1996 to come out, but like, it'd be great. But like, I would just love if they could find somebody, and it doesn't even have to be the biggest guy, but a guy who plays bigger than he necessarily is would be nice. And maybe that is shit. Who knows? But they need somebody to help them get to that next level. And that's one of the most important positions as far as getting to that next level. So that's fascinating, to be honest. And I love that we've just ignored Morgan Frost this whole time.
He's not going to be here. I'm cooked. Also, Connor McDavid, 2026. You heard it here first.
No, don't even entertain that for a second. It'd be great.
Well, they've got the assets. If McDavid's like, fuck this, I'm out.
I mean, that's the dream, obviously. He's the greatest player. He might be the single most talented player of all time. So that's the dream, but it's a hell of a dream.
Meech David.
Oh my God. Don't I can't even I can't even entertain that thought, because thinking of the greatest player in the world playing on my team is just something like it's hard for me to even fathom the idea that Michkov is here and giving us what he has. Like so for the game Saturday, Emily, my girlfriend, had a comedy show, and we went to Victory Brewing in Center City afterwards, and they had the game on. And I was like, it wasn't like I wasn't in the best position to watch it. I'm having conversation with friends. So I'm like turning and like watching the TV at the bar. And I didn't even realize like it went to overtime. Like I had to catch up on all this later. Mm-hmm. I looked up and I saw it was tied and it was overtime. I was like, well, shit. I went to the bathroom and I came out and I saw the Michkov goal. I'm like, oh my God. And I ran back to the table. I'm like, Emily, Matvei Michkov did it again. And it just like the feeling this guy gives you is so unbelievably awesome. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't, like, I have to pinch myself to realize that he's real, and he's 19. He's almost got double-digit goals already. And he's that cold-blooded quote was one of the best quotes I've ever seen. And like the fact that he gets it already, he gets it, and he does what he does. He has that creativity. He actually buries his attempts, he buries his shots. Like he actually scores freaking goals and he's special. Like he's special. He's the front runner for the Calder. He should be the front runner for the Calder. And I mean, he's leading all rookies in points, and he looks to be getting better. Like he looks to be understanding the game more every couple of weeks as he learns the goddamn language. And it's a cool feeling that we have lacked here for a long, long time.
As long as I've been around, for sure.
Yeah. Like, prime Claude Giroux, I think, felt really special. I don't know that I necessarily felt like this. Like my orange and black heart is growing 3 times thinking about this guy. Like it really is. Like I think I haven't really felt this way about the potential for the Flyers maybe since Richards and Carter, I think, first came up.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, I think part of it is that like Giroux kind of came out of nowhere. He wasn't like this highly touted prospect. He just was like, oh shit, we've got a really good player here.
We looked up one day and there he was. That's pretty much how it felt. Like it was one of those, like we liked him, and then the 2010 Stanley Cup final he scored some special goals in that one. And we were like, oh, we got something here. And then the team made the decision to trade Richards and Carter like they did and really put all their trust in Claude Giroux being the future of the franchise. Unfortunately, they never surrounded him with anything else good. They not to say they didn't try. Like they tried. Voracek and Simmons were part of the Richards and Carter trade. That was like, and Shen, that was all like, okay, we're going to try these guys out. And they were good attempts. And they're all, I mean, Voracek is up there in some of the Flyers records. Simmons, I think, is an all-time Flyer as far as emotion goes. Like we all love Wayne Simmons, and Braden Shen was a great power play component for a long time, and they tried to get Shea Weber. They had Pronger, and Pronger unfortunately had his injuries and had to leave. They tried Yager, who I should have kept. Because Hartnell was never the same after that year. They tried a lot of stuff, but they didn't try the right stuff. Like they didn't, and I felt like they just never really put enough effort into surrounding Giroux with the proper talent to utilize his skills, because really what they needed, like they should have had a Jeff Carter still, somebody to actually bury those goals. And like, Wayne Simmons was great at scoring goals. Like he really was, but Wayne Simmons also like had a cap. Like Wayne Simmons was like a 30 to 40 guy at his best. And that was pretty much it. Like they really needed to go out and get like a Rick Nash or somebody in that era.
Wait, are you telling
Patrick
me
Laine?
Are you telling me that Andrew McDonald did not solve the problems of that roster?
Didn't move the meter. And then, you know,
really?
Like, you move on to Hextall, who tried the rebuild, and for a while that Vinny LeCavalier didn't do it for you either. Oh my God. And, you know, but then Hextall never figured out how to make an NHL level move, and he didn't pull the trigger for Ryan O'Reilly, which I was lamenting the other day. And the thing is, they had a very special player in Claude Giroux, and they didn't surround him right. So Michkov, that's why this next 2 years is so important, because they have to. And the thing is, the crazy thing is, this kid might not be fully in his NHL prime for another like 6 years.
Yeah.
Like the fact that he's already doing this at his age is insane. So like, don't fumble the goddamn bag. Okay. No. When you get Alex Ovechkin, don't fumble the bag. And the Caps almost fumbled the bag. The fact that the Caps only got 1 cup out of Ovi is nuts. It's honestly, it should be a crime. They have one of the best, they have the best goal scorer of all time. I think we can just say that safely about Ovechkin at this point. And he's only got 1 cup. I think that's all he's going to get out of them, because while they're having a pretty good year, they ain't doing it. All right. Newsflash, Washington. No, they ain't doing it. All right. I'll put down my house. I'll put down my mortgage to say the Caps ain't winning the cup this year. All right.
You're probably right.
I am definitely right. All right. I feel good about that one. Thankfully you can't bet your mortgage over at Bet Online, but yeah, you can bet a lot of things. You can't bet your mortgage on the Caps not winning the cup, but don't fumble the bag is what it all comes down to. For the love of God, don't fumble the bag.
So far, it looks like they're doing it right. Like it's way too early to tell on so many of these prospects and young players. Like the direction looks good. The trends are in the right direction. Travis Konecny looks great. Like, you know, that you can see pieces of it falling into place. But Danny and Jonesy have the opportunity to rectify one of Hextall's greatest errors, and that was the 2017 draft, because they could always just go trade for Elias Pettersson, get him out of Vancouver. He doesn't have no trade protection until this summer. So if the Canucks are like, this ain't working out,
that's a real point. Joe, you dream big.
I do.
I always respect that with you.
What's the point if we don't dream big? Like, why not?
I can't dream. I've been too scarred by this team for years to dream big anymore. Michkov is the first guy who's really brought me to any point of thinking things are possible in recent history. And I feel good. I feel like things could actually happen. So on that note, let's start to wind things down a little bit. Yes. Let's talk about this week ahead for the Flyers. So
let's do it.
3 games this week. They got a little lull, but then we pick back up on Thursday, and they're hosting the Florida Panthers that night. And that's a tough matchup right there for our Philadelphia Hockey Flyers.
Hey, they beat the Panthers last year. So basically by the transitive property, they won a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. That's how it works.
Hashtag 1975 over here.
Yes. Hashtag 1975. It's going to be a tough one. I mean, the Panthers are the reigning Cup champs. They still look really good. They just absolutely waxed the Carolina Hurricanes. It feels like a loss, but I feel like they could get it to overtime. So I'm saying 4-3 Panthers.
Oh, there you go. I'm thinking that's a loss straight up. I'm gonna say, and so it could potentially be Sam Harrison's first game back too, which either he's going to be super well rested and primed to go, hot to go over there, or he's going to be rusty as hell. So I'm going to say sorry to our buddy Sammy and say it feels like a 5-2 loss.
Oof, brutal. Well, I did forget to factor in the Bobrovsky of it all, and he always just plays like a Vezina winner every time he faces the Flyers.
It's almost like he's bitter about something from a while back.
But what could he possibly be bitter about? You know, what does he?
What
does he have to be bitter about?
I'm bitter still. I'm bitter about that shit. That's like my biggest, one of my biggest Flyers gripes ever was giving up on Bobrovsky.
Why did they do it?
Why did they do it? Because Ed Snyder got impatient and wanted Ilya Bryzgalov for God knows what reason.
His only game. Why you have to be mad?
Why you have to be mad?
Why you have to be mad?
Oh, it's so humongous big. And sadly, I think that's going to be a humongous big loss for the Flyers. But Saturday and Sunday, they can make up for it. We got Flyers at Bruins Saturday, and the Utah Hockey Club comes to Philadelphia on Sunday to try some ABV beers above 4, which should be nice for them. But I'm thinking I'm thinking the Flyers can get 3 points, if not 4, out of those 2 games.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Flyers, Bruins. I mean, maybe the Bruins are going to have that new coach bump, and they're going to be.
That's right. I forgot that they decided that good old Jimmy M was not good enough for them. Yeah.
And then 5 days later, the Blues fired the guy they hired less than a year ago and hired Jim Montgomery. I don't know. I still don't believe in the Bruins that much. I think that's like a 3. Yeah, but Swayman is good. So I'm going to say that's like a 3-2 Flyers win.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. Just to be a different than you, I'm going to say...
You can say the same thing if you want.
No, I don't want to say the same thing. I don't like saying the same thing. I'm going to go with I'm going to go 4-2. They get an empty netter.
Oh, I don't believe in the empty netter. I don't think they're going to get it.
You don't believe in the empty netter? The empty netter is real, whether you want it to be or not.
I don't think that
the empty netter is Joe's moon landing here.
Steve, they can't clear the zone. They can't. There's no way they're going to get an empty netter.
The Bruins are old. They're getting the empty netter. I'm saying it now.
All right.
Bruins are old. They're washed. And then Utah is how the hell is even Utah doing this year? I haven't paid any attention to this damn hockey club.
They're not great. They are at the time of recording 10-10-4, which is Hockey 500.
Oh, there you go. They're extremely mid.
They had a hot start. And they have kind of fallen apart since. One of their goalies is now out.
You mean to tell me that a team rocking the Arizona Coyotes roster is not doing well?
Hey, they've got some exciting young players.
They sure do. I love Clayton Keller, but what do they got beyond him?
Dylan Genther, Mikhail Sergachev.
I forgot they got Sergachev. I'm going to be honest. I forgot they got Sergachev. That was a nice move.
Logan Cooley is a really exciting prospect. They've got good stuff down there. I
think they got the Coyote stink on them was my problem.
Yeah, a little bit, but at least they're not playing in a college arena anymore.
They're playing in front of more than 5,000 people, which is nice.
What a treat for the Utah Utes, the Yeti. I hope they call them the Yeti. I'm
into the Yeti. Yeah, I like the Yeti.
So that is the second half of a back-to-back for Utah. They'll be coming
for the Flyers.
Buffalo. Yeah, the Yeti will be coming from Buffalo. So, man, that could just be a shit show.
The Yeti coming from Buffalo seems like a very appropriate destination, by the way. Because Buffalo. Did you see that clip that Jason McNeil posted in the Slack earlier of a wall in a hotel flying off because of a snowstorm?
Yes.
Buffalo's a wild place, man.
It is a wild place. But
It's a wild place.
I think the Flyers lose that 1-4-2 empty net goal, just because it's going to be a wonky one.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm thinking that's a win for the Flyers, and I'm going to go with Matvei Michkov overtime winner.
Ooh.
Okay. A shockingly tight 3-2 game right there.
Oh, okay. I'm into it.
For some reason, I've only got the Flyers allowing like 2 goals a game. But
if Ersin, Kolosov, and Fedotov are as good as we are hoping they are, maybe. Besides, you got to get. I forgot to give Michkov his record-setting overtime goal.
Well, I did. He's getting it against the Utes.
Yeah. I love it.
Just in the nick of time before he turns into a real boy.
Yes, a real 20-year-old. Can't even drink in the U.S.
Can't even drink in the U.S.
Yeah.
Somehow I think he's not going to be stopped, but that's just my 2 cents on the matter.
Maybe he's also such a fitness freak that he just doesn't. Who knows? But
I mean, he could be like a Jaromir Jagr who his vices weren't drinking. It was is gambling, and he likes
check
the
bottles.
Yeah. He likes the ladies, gambling and the ladies. That's what Jagr likes, and midnight workouts. So
I still there's that video clip of him in like an all denim suit, just like blue jean jacket, blue jean shirt, blue jeans. Like he's like, yeah, you can't get these. I love them. So
so good.
Right when he came to the league.
So good.
But anyway, I think that pretty much wraps us up, does it not?
I'm wrapped up. I feel good. This was a nice power hour here for us talking your Philadelphia Hockey Flyers.
Thank you for coming on to the BSH podcast. Where can the people find you?
Let's see if I can locate it on the camera here. You can find me on Blue Sky and still kind of Twitter, but not really, mainly Blue Sky, over at Flyperbole. You can also find me at Esteban on both of those. You can find me at Flyperbole on Instagram and TikTok and all that fun stuff. So yeah, that's where you can find me. Oh wow.
Yeah, you can find me at JF DeMarini right there on the screen. I have basically stopped posting on Twitter. If I have any thoughts, I usually put them on Blue Sky now, just because I don't have the capacity to do that many websites at once. I think I posted something on Twitter the other day, and I was like, I didn't want to post that on Twitter. I wanted to post it on Blue Sky, so I deleted it on Twitter.
Come over to Blue Sky. Hang out with us. It's the place to be right now.
I have more followers there in the 2 weeks since I created an account than I ever got on Twitter.
Is that right? That's awesome. That's awesome.
I'm almost to 200.
The engagement is just like so much better. It's just like crazy.
I'm 4 away from 200. So if you're listening, go follow me on Blue Sky and get me over the hump.
Go follow JF DeMarini. Come on. DeMarini, Italian Joe. Come on.
The Bean Boy.
The Bean Boy. #1 Bean Boy. Follow him. Yeah. So Flyperbole, JF DeMarini. Go check us out there. Follow Ryan Gilbert while you're at it. Gilbs, we missed Gilbs this week, but we're glad we could talk some puck with him away.
For sure. Yeah. And as we always wrap up every episode, I gotta say the line. Go Flyers.
There you go. Beautiful. Good night, folks.